And we continue at 2:05 in the afternoon on the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wangs in Culver City.
This audience always has an angle. Mike writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. Guys, the key with paintballs is to keep them in the freezer. There's a reason they have a label that reads, "Don't use below 36 degrees."
800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. If you've been the victim of catalytic converter theft or copper wire theft and you want to tell your story, we'd love to hear from you. We'll go back to the phones at 2:35. If you're on hold, stay there. We'll get to as many calls as we can coming up after the news at the bottom of the hour. Right now, it is our pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. He has spent his entire career in the non-for-profit sector, the non-for-profit political sector, including working for organizations like the Claremont Institute, the Heartland Institute, and most recently the David Horowitz Freedom Center. He has a brand new book that's out that is titled A Time to Stand, and it is a critique of grievance politics, saying there's another side to that coin, and that's what the book is about. You can follow Mike on X at FinchMichael61. Mike Finch, welcome.
Oh, thank you, John. Thank you so much for having me on. It's great to speak to you again, and it was great to see you at our event in Vegas a couple weeks ago. Always good to see you. So thank you for being there with us.
Well, great to see you out there, too, and both of us saw my money. And that's always fun to do in Las Vegas.
And you left it all there, right? I'm sorry.
Well, it's good to see what they did with it. Lots of volcanoes.
Yes.
And flying Russians.
Always a great place. Yeah.
So you have a new book out called A Time to Stand, after spending a lifetime working in politics, a lifetime working in the non-for-profit sector, about what you think is a portion of the debate that is too frequently left out. And it's a portion of the debate that's the most optimistic part of the debate and something that we should spend more time focusing on. And you decided to write about it.
Yeah, I did, John, because I've been in this sector for a long time, as you said, and defending America and defending, our republic. And so much of the focus is always, at least from the conservative side, and on the Declaration, the Constitution, teaching the Federalist Papers, and defending America from that angle. And that is critical. We have to do that. But we've seen these attacks on American culture and American history, and I think there's been an inadequate response to that. We're so fixated again on defending the Constitution and teaching about the American founding, and again, that we have to do that. But there's this other side of American history and our culture that is incredibly rich and beautiful. That, first of all, is not taught in our schools anymore. Very little. Actually, we're teaching the opposite. That America is this kind of horrible, imperialistic, racist, slave-holding country, the 1619 Project and all of that. So a part of the book, the book covers kind of a broad brush of many, many different essays and articles on different topics. But at the heart of it, it is not just kind of defending American culture, but restoring American culture, which is incredibly rich and I think is kind of unknown, even for a lot of people on our side, conservatives, because we were not taught these things in our schools. We've kind of forgotten the richness of American culture. And I try to bring that out in my own way by painting pictures of really about American history, American landscape, and the beauty of America, which again, I think has been in many ways forgotten, but definitely needs to be restored if we're going to restore America. This kind of make America great. There's many aspects of that. And this is kind of my contribution on the aspects of American culture that need to be kind of restored and brought back.
You mentioned the schools, and the schools have definitely dropped the ball at teaching American history, teaching state history here in California, where so many people are from different parts of the country. Very few people who live here know virtually anything about the state's history, and it's a fascinating one, and certainly a story that is worth knowing, especially if you live here and you plan on living here. But I think it even goes beyond that. I mean, look at the History Channel, for heaven's sake. I remember when the History Channel first started, people used to call it the Hitler Channel because they'd show nonstop documentaries about World War II, and
Right.
you knew the ins and the outs about World War II, but they really didn't focus on a lot of other subjects. But now you turn it on, and not only is there no history about World War II, it's just about aliens, and it's about all of the stuff that has nothing to do with history. And you go, okay, if the History Channel has dropped the ball, who's doing it right?
Well, no one, right? I mean, very few schools in the country even teach American history, or they teach their version. You know, the Howard Zinn version of American history. That's in both the K through 12 and the universities. It's the history of America is Howard Zinn's version. And you're right. I mean, the History Channel and all of there's these different outlets. None of them really touch on the richness of American history. They're there to either just get viewers or you're right. I remember when you had all the constant World War II is fascinating. I mean, anyone who grew up in the 20th century, studied World War II, and it's a fascinating history and a great period of American history. But there's a lot more to American history than 1941 to 1945. But and that's great that was taught. But in the schools, it's not just that they ignore American history. They've taken it and turned it on its head and taught about how horrible American history is. They're only teaching that one version. And many of the things that I've discovered, and you're right, I wasn't, I was raised in Illinois, so I heard I read about Abraham Lincoln and Illinois history, but I was completely ignorant of California's history when I came out to California, almost 30 years ago. And I don't know what's taught in the schools about California's history, although I have a pretty good idea of that California has, I think, one of the most fascinating histories of any of the states in the Republic. But those things are not being taught. And many of the things that I've learned, John, about history, and I'm covering a broad brush. I'm not really an expert on any specific part of history or any, but you learn, and it's self-taught. Most of the things that I've learned about American history came after my schooling, right? I mean, I went to university. I didn't get a postgraduate degree, and I learned a few things in school and through university, but really very little. Most of it has been self-taught and reading, and then discovering some of the great writers in American history I found out about a few years ago, or the great architects or the great artists. And then my years in the Claremont Institute, and then of course David Horowitz Freedom Center has been an education in itself. So I have been able to learn a lot about the richness of America and California and the history, but not through the schools. The schools have been, I mean, we know this, right? And you probably talk about this on the show all the time. American schools, our education system is a disaster. So on so many fronts, and particularly, of course, on the humanities, right? I mean, so history, philosophy, all these things have completely been taken over, and they've become indoctrination schools. And again, not just ignoring these things, but turning it on its head and teaching how horrible, not just America, but Western civilization. And they're teaching an alternative history that I think it's incredibly destructive, because, we can try to achieve this kind of American greatness and make America great. But if we don't believe in the culture, don't even understand the culture and the roots of our, not just American history, but Western civilization, that's a huge void that we're not going to be able to really restore the greatness if we don't have an understanding of the culture. So this problem goes deep. I mean, how are we going to change the schools? I mean, there's, Hillsdale College and a few, Thomas Aquinas, there's a few universities and colleges out there that are teaching these things. And maybe some of the homeschooling movement, there are some good schools in the country, but very few. David Horowitz talked about this for years, the long march of the left. They started, 60 years ago, and they started with the education system. Bill Ayers, of course, was a famous leftist who, went to Chicago and led a lot of the riots and rallies for the left. But his calling was, he was an education professor. He was at the University of Chicago in their education department, teaching teachers on what to teach about America. So that's where the left put their effort into changing our education system, and they've got a 60-year head start on us, and we're just now kind of waking up to, like, what happened? Well, they took over the schools, and how are we going to take them back? That's a larger discussion in our education people on our side that have probably better answers to that than I do. I'm just trying to kind of shine a light on these are the things that we can be proud of. We should be incredibly, this is the greatest country, I think, in human history. So there's a history to that needs to be taught. And I'm not saying that there's not warts and problems in American history. Of course there are. We're human. So of course there's going to be things that we are maybe not super proud of. But there's so much more that we should be proud of. And we need to teach all of it instead of just the negative, which is all that our children are learning now. And that is a real, it's beyond a shame, but it's a devastating, I think it's a tragedy that we're not teaching the greatness of what this country is.
Do you think one of the silver linings to the COVID cloud is that people who were not allowed to go on cruise ships because the cruise ships were grounded, they weren't allowed to go to the amusement parks, they were shut down. A lot of international travel to other countries, to other continents, that wasn't allowed. A lot of things that people normally do on vacation that involve gluttony and just hanging out on the beach and eating what you want and drinking what you want, a lot of that was eliminated. And I know, personally, and a lot of people I know, they had to kind of shake the snow globe, and they had to do things that they otherwise didn't do for vacation because those were the only things that were available. I know, for example, I went to the Railroad Museum in Sacramento that talked about the history of the Transcontinental Railroad and Southern Pacific and really the founding of the West and the shaping of Silicon Valley. And you would assume, okay, it's a museum about trains. It's not going to be that crowded. It's not going to be that popular. Oh, my God, it was totally swamped. You go to the national parks. You go to the parks in the West. I remember during COVID, first time I ever went to Yellowstone, and it was like bumper-to-bumper traffic at rush hour on the 405 freeway in Yellowstone because so many people were going there on their vacation. There were RVs, there were trucks, there were sedans. It was people from different states, saw all the different license plates, people from all different walks of life. They were going to the national parks. You talk to people on the East Coast, same thing was true with Gettysburg, where people who might otherwise be at Disneyland said, all right, well, Disneyland shut down, let's go to Gettysburg instead. And I think even though it was disruptive to travel plans, and it was certainly may not have been at the top of the list of what people wanted to do during COVID for their vacation, I think a lot of good comes from going to places like Yellowstone and Gettysburg and the Railroad Museum and those sorts of things, because if you spend your time at these places, it's hard not to develop an interest, which then leads you to the history and it leads you to the origins of the story.
Oh, so true, John. I maybe 25, 30 years ago, I've done a lot of traveling, as it sounds like you have as well, but, the Four Corners region, right? I mean, the Painted Desert, the Grand Canyon, all of that. And it's most fascinating landscape, maybe, one of the most fascinating landscape areas in the world. It's just incredible. And any American who hasn't been there obviously has to go. It's one of those must-sees. But when you went 25, 30 years ago, I'd stop in hotels or stop in restaurants, and it seemed like most of the people traveling through these areas were not American, right? You have the Germans, the Europeans, Germans in particular, are fascinated with the desert West, right? And who isn't, right? Because you don't have that kind of landscape in Europe. But that's changed, and maybe it was COVID or something has changed. But Americans kind of went back on the road and are starting to go to the museums. And the one thing, Donald Trump just came out and was critical of the Smithsonian because it's far left, just this far left claptrap about how horrible America history is. You go to the Smithsonian and he's trying to push this, let's teach the positives of American history. But the one thing about the Grand Canyon and Yellowstone or going to these grand places, you can't change the landscape. If you go to Gettysburg, you may have a museum there that tries to teach an alternative of what, I don't think they've done that too bad. I think Gettysburg is still pretty accurate, but there is some of that kind of leftist indoctrination even at Gettysburg. But when you're standing there at Little Round Top, the landscape can't change. And I think there's an attraction, and Americans are eager, I think more than eager, to really learn about American history and go to the parks and go to the battlefields and really learn about what the truth of American history is. And you can't help but once you go to these places, then you're going to want to learn more, and that sets you on a journey to read. And fortunately, there's so many resources online now, so you can find out the truth about American history. But going on the road, and I write about that, a couple of the essays in the book. Nothing can transform you more than actually just getting in your car and driving across America and going to these places, because that is an education that you can't get in the schools. And I'm so glad that you've. I've never been to the Railroad Museum in Sacramento, and I'll have to put that on my list because, like I said, California's history is incredibly fascinating, and one that I would hope all California children are learning. But sometimes you got to do it on your own, and maybe COVID there was a kind of a hidden blessing of COVID as we got to kind of look at ourselves, and I mean, nothing wrong with going to the beach, and I love cruises and all that, but you're absolutely right. I think it's changed. I'm hopeful in the book that we are going to, restore American beauty and American culture and our history, because I think that's what Americans want. Nobody wants to feel horrible about our country and think that we live in a country that's stained with all these sins, whatever sins there are, because there are things that are incredibly blissful and wonderful about America. It's just waiting there for us to read and hit the road and go see. So.
And it's also fascinating. If you understand the history, for example, of California, you know why the cities are named what they're named. You know why the streets are named what they're named. You know why the theaters and the sports stadiums are named what they're named. You understand the backstory, and it helps you understand where you live. It helps you understand your culture. It helps you understand everything about the area that you live in, which to so many people is foreign. And if you don't understand it, it's easy to have it taken away from you. I always tell people this. In the South, right now, there is a movement among those on the left to strip away any reference to the Confederacy, any reference to General Lee, things of that nature. And I say, if you support that, just understand that they would do the exact same thing to all the missionaries in California if they had the opportunity, which means they'd strip away all the missions. They'd strip away all the names of the cities, many of the names of the streets, because so much of that was shaped by these people, these Spanish missionaries, where if you erase that part of your culture and you erase that part of your history, then what do you have left? And the answer is not much.
Oh, that's so true. When you bring up the Confederacy, one of the great lies of Donald Trump was when he, they had that rally in Charlottesville, and he said, there are two sides to this, right? I mean, there are good people on both sides. His point was, and I'm one of those good people in that I defend, when they took down Robert E. Lee's statue in New Orleans, I thought it was devastating. Robert E. Lee was a great American. He was in the U.S. Army before the Civil War, and he fought valiantly and honorably for what he believed for the rights of Virginia. And we can go through, that's a different debate. The North won, the Union was preserved, and Lincoln, is an icon in American history. So I thank God the Union was preserved. But Robert E. Lee has a place in that history. So however you feel about him, and even some conservatives said, okay, well, maybe we should take down Robert E. Lee's statue. We'll end it there. Well, John, you just nailed it, right? It doesn't end with Robert E. Lee. And you saw this during the summer of 2020 with all the riots. They wanted to take down statues of Abraham Lincoln, who was the great emancipator. So it doesn't end with Robert E. Lee. You have to teach all of the history. This is all part of American history. And you're right. I mean, the Spanish missionaries, I don't know if they're taught. But Sepulveda Boulevard. Sepulveda was a great Spaniard. I mean, and they ended up being on the losing side, right? I mean, the battlefield. There's that battle right off the Cahuenga Pass. There's a building there that talks about the battles of the Spanish American, the Mexican American War. And these are things that, I don't know how many people go to these kind of museums or even learn about. Pretty much every town and every street in California, not every, but there's so many that have a place in history that Californians are not aware of. And that needs to be taught. the missionaries, California wouldn't exist without the missionaries.
All right.
And I think the missionary history was preserved for a long time, and now it's kind of forgotten because that's one of the dark periods now of California history, and that's a tragedy.
The book is A Time to Stand, The Dire Hour to Defend American Beauty. The author, Mike Finch. It's available online at Amazon.com. Mike, thanks so much for stopping by, and congratulations on the book.
Thank you so much, John. Take care.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, if you're sitting at the dealer waiting for your stolen catalytic converter to be repaired, and you've got your headphones and your handy-dandy iPhone, you can listen to podcasts of us.
Just search for The John Phillips Show wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's the Apple Podcasts app, iHeart, Spotify. Search for The John Phillips Show. Hit subscribe. You can download all the episodes. Do a Google on the YouTube. Get the KABC app. Get the KSFO app. So many different ways to listen to our radio stations and download all the podcasts. And you can listen to them right there in the repair shop as you go over to the vending machine and you get a bag of M&Ms. Regular M&Ms? Oh, no.
No, peanut.
And on Friday, we're going to Universal City.
We're going back to the Universal Hilton to once again help the Union Rescue Mission go over the edge for a cause. It's happening this Friday and Saturday at the Universal Hilton. You can sign up and rappel down a 25-story building. I did it last year. It is an experience. All while trying to raise funds to help the Union Rescue Mission's work with people experiencing homelessness. Every dollar raised, we match up to $500,000. So sign up to rappel or support a participant. Donate to double your impact and share with your friends to amplify awareness. Go to the website if you want to participate in this great event, urm.org/OTE. And Johnny and I will be broadcasting live Friday from noon to 3.
All right, let's go back to the phones and welcome Bill in Santa Clarita. Bill, hello.
Yeah, hey, how you doing? Was awakened at about 3 a.m. This is about 7 months back, and heard all these car alarms and went outside and was a little too late because they'd already taken about 9 catalytic converters from cars parked along the street. So that was my only comment, and have a good day.
Well, thank you so much for the call. And Randy, this is a story we hear all the time because, again, many of these operations are professionals. They can just hit one car after another after another. In fact, they hit more parked cars than a certain morning man at a different radio station.
Oh, it's just not fair anymore to keep making that joke. But, yeah, go ahead.
Let's go to Mark in Milpitas. Mark, hello.
Oh, hi. This is Mark. And Milpitas is the city just north of San Jose. So we live in an enclosed subdivision, probably about 2, 3 in the morning. Thieves came and took the catalytic converter off of my 2005 Honda Accord, which I hear is one of the prime targets. Nice car with 250,000 miles, worked real good. I went out in the morning, turned the key, and, of course, I heard the loud noise and said, please let this not be what I think it is. Looked under the car, and at least they were nice enough to leave 3 bolts on the street under where the catalytic converter was. So the insurance basically said the car's not worth a payout. Catalytic converter would be about $2,000 with about a 4-month wait, although some guy on the side said there's a place in San Jose you could go where you could probably get one for $200 or $300. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's probably the group that stole it in the first place. So ended up that the car was totaled, and I had to say goodbye to Mr. Gray. Mr. Gray Mobile was gone, and the insurance isn't going to pay for an old car, even if it works perfectly, for $2,500 repair. So that was the end of that story. But the cop that came that took the report the next morning said, oh, you're about the 3rd one in the last 2 weeks in this area. So the earlier callers who have said that they canvass the areas, I fully believe it, that they cruise up and down the street, look for target cars, and then come back and get them at a convenient time. But the cop said, 3 to 5 minutes, they jack it up, bang it, and out they go, and you can't believe it.
And this is something that won't show up in any statistic, where you had a car that on paper was worth nothing, but in your particular situation, it was an affordable way of getting from point A to point B, and it worked just fine. And they took that away from you. And now you got to go and you got to buy a new car that's more expensive, where the insurance is going to be more expensive, the registration is going to be more expensive, and that catalytic converter might get stolen too.
That's funny. They don't price in the price of inconvenience, do they?
No, they don't.
So anyway, I just it's a story that many have told, but it's always good to tell it to you. Then, thank you guys very much.
Well, thank you for the call. Let's go to David in Vallejo. David, hello.
Hello, John. My incident happened about 3-4 years ago at the job I was working at. I parked underneath our security cameras like I did every day in the morning, and when I left in the evening, I started up the car. I had the unmistakable loud noise. I looked under. The catalytic was taken. Fortunately, my company was nice enough to field a part of the cost for my catalytic, and I just had to pay the labor charge.
So it was stolen from your place of work?
Yep, right underneath a security camera.
Good Lord. So they got the person on tape doing it, and nothing happened.
No, we couldn't. These guys were slick. I think they knew it, and they came in from the blind side of the camera because it was at the corner of a building, and where I parked, I usually park, but there was enough of a blind spot, and they went under. Because a friend of mine joked, where did you get the World War II aircraft?
Well, I'll tell you, I've talked to people who own small businesses where they keep cars there overnight. If you have a body shop or a parking lot or whatever that requires cars to be on your property overnight, if people are able to break in and steal the catalytic converters, if you file one too many claims with your insurance company, they'll drop you over that.
Well, the strange thing was, I never went through my insurance. As I said, my company was nice enough to afford the cost of getting me the catalytic, and the company we do business with, which is a muffler company, installed it for me, and all I had to pay was the labor.
All right. Well, thank you for the call, sir. Let's go to Richard in Santa Rosa. Richard, hello.
Hi, John. So Randy, too. So I had an old Prius of 2005 about a year and a half ago, and went out one morning, and as soon as I heard that noise, I thought, well, that's it. I knew what happened. And I thought that they were going to just total the car. It was almost 20 years old, about 130,000 miles, but they replaced it. $3,500, and the body shop that did it said I was lucky. I said, how so? And they said that they were professional. They did it cleanly, and so otherwise it could have cost me a lot more. Well, if they had knocked on the door and asked for $500, it would have paid me to just pay them it. So that's it.
All right. Thank you for the call, sir. Let's go to Timothy in Hercules. Timothy, welcome.
Hello, how are you doing today?
Good.
Good. Real quick, I want to preface this a little bit. About 20 years ago, a gentleman said that if that the average person could take $4,000 or $5,000, go to a state they've never been in at all, ever, and buy, $4,000 or $5,000 of illegal drugs. And the question is, how can they do that? Because either one or two things are going to happen. Either you're going to get robbed or you're going to make the purchase that you're there to make the purchase. So the question is, how could a person go someplace, never been there, doesn't know anybody, and then make that purchase when the police themselves live there? Stay there. They're there every day, and they can't find the same guy. So what I'm saying is this. For all these items to be stolen constantly, we're talking about the average police officer is what? They're pulling in about $100,000. So the detectives are pulling in even more than that. So my question is, you mean to tell me nobody has said, you know what, let's rent 25 cars from Avis or Hertz or whatever, and let's park them in the places. Let's get the cars that we know they really want to do this with, and let's park them in places that, they're going to be, they like to work in. And let's put one of these, things that you put on that you can follow. Now, I don't understand why none of that's been happening. Another thing, I think I heard you say somebody took 9,800 catalytic converters someplace and sold them. Well, see, to me, the FBI should have been there on that. Should have put that person. That person should be in jail for years.
Oh, that person's going to jail for years, but not until after he stole 9,600 of them.
Oh, so they finally caught him.
He was the
ringleader.
That
was in Fresno.
Okay, but see, the thing is, he stole basically 10,000, and they finally caught him. Well, my goodness. All I'm saying is it's so easy, we're talking about these people are professionals. Yeah, well, we the people pay professionals to take care of these professionals, you know what I'm saying? And so it doesn't make any sense to me that this amount of things are being stolen, and we should hear about people going to jail, like regularly, especially when you can put some type of thing on it where you can just follow it. Just let them steal it, watch them steal it, but then follow it because he's taking them to where all the others are.
Well, here's the thing. The state of California looks at these problems from a backwards point of view. For example, they're upset with Kia and Hyundai because they say your cars are too easy to steal. Those are the cars that are being stolen and used as the battering rams to drive through the wall of a 7-Eleven, and then another stolen Kia is used to haul the ATM out of the 7-Eleven or the lottery machine or whatever it is that they're trying to steal from that particular convenience store. And instead of saying, all right, we're going to hunt down all of these people who are stealing the Kias and using them as battering rams, and we're going to put them in prison for a really long time, the state of California's impulse is to blame the auto manufacturer and say, oh, it's because you guys have a design flaw that makes it too easy for criminals to steal. We're going to lean on you. We're going to declare you to be the problem. With the catalytic converters, it's the Toyota Priuses that are primarily hit. Those cars you hear about having the catalytic converter stolen all the time. And it's the same thing. They're blaming Toyota. They think Toyota is the problem for making them too easy to steal. Well, that's not Toyota's fault. That's not Toyota's problem. Toyota's just putting devices on cars that are required through regulation to be there. They don't anticipate a state being so lawless where they're going to be stolen right and left if those cars are parked out on the street, or sometimes even behind gates because the gates can be clipped and people can get in through the gates. At some point, you have to say, okay, it's not the auto manufacturer's fault for everything. It's our fault for not punishing people severely when we catch them doing this, because it's not like everyone in the state is stealing them. It's professional operations that are stealing most of these devices. These are people who know what they're doing. This is what they do for work, and it's quite profitable for them. We need to find these organized crime rings when we catch them, and we need to throw the book at them. And I would imagine that it's only a handful of people that are doing it, but they're just so efficient at how they do it, they could hit a lot of cars in a very short period of time. We need to catch them, and we need to put them in jail.
Well, they're so efficient, or we're so inefficient. There was a time, somebody broke into a car. We call the police. The police would actually come out. Take fingerprints, do the whole deal. Today, somebody breaking your car, they say, oh, yeah, go to our website. That's ridiculous. They need to come out and do their job. So the other thing is this, what's really going on here, because if you want to talk about the bottom line, it's we the people. We the people have gotten complacent. Oh, okay, well, it happened again. I hear people on here laughing. It's not funny what's going on because it's costing us a ton of money. And so what should really happen is this. We should go down to the governors and the captains, police captains, and say, look, if you can't do this job, if you don't want to put enough effort, because, see, this isn't happening in Black Hawk. That's for sure. You know what I'm saying? So this is what I'm saying. So we, the people, are part of the problem because we're not pressing the people that we're paying hundreds of millions of dollars a year to take care of. It's kind of like, where the Supreme Court came out and said, oh, well, the police, their responsibility is not to keep us safe. It's like, what? So,
all right. Well, thank you for the call, sir. I appreciate it. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. Let's go to Richard in Mount Shasta. Richard, hello.
Good afternoon. I think mine's the only case where it ended up good. I couldn't make it up on this old 89 F-250. I think transmission problem because I was driving it all around Southern California. But anyway, it stopped outside the gate. So I decided I'd wait the night for the tow truck to pull it in all the way to the yard. And sure enough, guy shows up about 2 a.m. I use that mechanic's roller. I roll right under it. I got a big 45 in my right hand. I says, "Go ahead, Pedro." "Ay, my Dios." And he took off running down the highway. He had the portable on there. He never came back.
You went all Clint Eastwood on his ass.
That's all I got.
All right. Well, that's not all you have. You also have your catalytic converter. Thanks for the call. Let's go to Mike in Monrovia. Mike, hello.
Hello, guys. I've had 3 family members lose their catalytic converters, all in California. We had at work our flatbed truck, which we used to deliver product on. They stole the catalytic converter out of there, which, and you mentioned the residual effects of what happens after. You know, you're stuck with a car, with no car, and not able to see the family. After ours was stolen, there's a PhD in electrical engineering, a couple of software engineers, and several other technicians trying to figure out how to stop it happening again. Anywhere from putting, ridiculous sensor systems to building a slab of concrete that you can park over. My idea was just to bring the dog crap to work every day and throw it under where we park the truck. And that seems to have worked. So anyway, let's stop them. Thank you.
Thank you for the call. Let's go to Mike in San Jose. Mike, welcome.
Good afternoon, guys. I had somebody break into my car one time, and I called the police, and they said to make a report, and I asked them if their car says to protect and to serve, and they said yes, and I said, well, then get over here and start serving. I'm a taxpayer. Somebody please come over. They did come.
Well, I'm glad they did because we pay a fortune to live here and we deserve services.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to Texas next month. Get
all right.
Here.
Well, continue to get that KSFO app, even in Texas, because we got better talk radio out here.
I got it. I have like 300 stations on my telephone, and I Bluetooth it. All right.
All right.
Have a great day.
Thank you for the call. Let's go to John in Santa Clarita. John, hello.
Hi there. I like the guy with the gun suggestion. That's good. You can also, some muffler shops will put a cage over your catalytic converter, and it slows them down. So I heard that from the motorman.
A cage around the bottom of your car. That's what it's come to. Thank you for the call, sir.
It's like a chastity belt for your car.
I'm sure that looks attractive. Imagine selling your car to someone in a different state, and they go, what the hell is this cage doing here? Oh, you don't understand. It's this thing called Prop 47.